here today. Let me just I have to admit that it's really exciting to stand here on stage today, and thank you organizers to make this fantastic venue happen. Let's start with a couple of words about me. My name is Ekaterina. One moment. Oh, right. Of course, anyway, sorry, some technical tricks. My name is Ekaterina, is Russian short for Kate. So if you can't pronounce that, you can call me Kate. I work currently in a company called Accenture. Last years I live in Oslo, even though I'm initially from Russia. And as well, I'm working as an Angular trainer for a Russian online school called Untitled. But today I'm going to talk about our project that I work on in Accenture. We work for a big mobile carrier in Norway, and about common sense assumptions. Why are they good and why are they bad? And I'm going to give some examples of what we expected from our users as developer team, and when our expectations were not actually what we really saw them to be. Story time. One of my friends was once working for a big international clothing retail company in a Russian office. And once he received a huge delivery of things he did not expect or order at all, and when he opened this delivery, he saw a lot of fluffy socks and pajamas and all this stuff when you think of, if you hear the word Christmas, marshmallows, like cozy things, you get the point. And my friend asked his boss, why he did ever receive that, since he didn't order. And his boss, who was residing in France, he told, this collection, it was a home clothes collection. It has been a huge success all over Europe. So they decided that since my friend lived in Russia, everyone knows that it's pretty freezing cold in Russia in winter, right? So they decided that this collection would be a fantastic success there. So they decided to correct his mistake of not ordering that, and they just shipped it to him. And this sounds like a pretty valid assumption, right? The only problem is that in Russia, like the vast majority of the territory, is still heated using the ancient Soviet system of central heating, which is not really adjustable or customizable at all. And the 90% of population, I'm not sure about the numbers, they really struggle with really hot air. It's really too hot and the dry air. So everyone basically sleeps naked and goes barefoot. So almost all this collection just went on clearance. Common sense assumptions are really nice, but sometimes they fail. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't make any guesses or predictions. We should and have to, but it's really hard to say when it can happen and our expectation will not be delivered. So it's really important to validate our ideas in all the stages of the development, especially when we're going to spend some money and some millions and development months probably on the project. And this was some techniques we used in our project when we were working on Midbedrift 2.0. So Midbedrift 2.0, it is a self-service solution project for Telenor's corporate customers. Telenor is a mobile carrier in Norway. And what does this solution do? It's typically when you can administrate data usage for your customers, or order a new SIM card, or have an overview over the subscriptions, or order data packages for your employees. And we have really different customers, all from 1 to 3 employees in the company up to corporate giants. 2.0, it means that we actually were recreating the solution. What was wrong with the 1.0? Nothing at all, or not much. It was created in 2007. It was really powerful. It had a lot of functions, but it was probably way too powerful and way too complicated, because a lot of those functions were quite nice hidden, and we saw that it was not really used by our customers, because customers are quite conservative in this segment and they tend to just call good old customer support in a lot of cases. So we created MinBrief 2.0. It now is a large-scale Angular application because we love Angular, and we have a Java API on backend. And I have to say here that Telenor has a lot of complex backend systems, and we have to abstract away this complexity and show it like a very simple application for our customers. Then, since we love Angular, we implemented our own grid and SVG icon system that are really inspired by Angular material, but we don't use Angular material directly. And then we created a known Node API, quite a simple one for our prototyping needs. So a short demo of what we created. Oh, great. Well, that was I expected. Good. Yeah. I'm so sorry. This is some pictures from our previous solution. Okay. It probably doesn't work that well. Let me start once again. I'm so sorry. Well, I think I will just go where we stopped. Yeah, so there are some new views that we implemented. So we have subscription lists here that we can filter and search. We changed all the principles that how we visualized our lists and detail pages. And then, since we already had one solution that was confirmed not really intuitive, so we made to use some different approach. Here we made some graphs. We use high charts for graphs, by the way. It's a nice library. And then where prototyping comes in the picture, we use constant prototyping, user testing, guerrilla tests. So we actually invited some people from our potential customers and our real customers. We showcased them our new features, and we had a laboratory where we actually see it and look what they do, what they click on, and ask them to accomplish some tasks. Yeah, so it was not a perfect demo, but it worked. So we work agile, we use Scrum, and we don't only work agile with actual development, we as well have design sprints and several iterations. So we make some design, then we user test that, and after that it's confirmed it's okay, we go actually to development with that. And how we prototype. Initially, when we started with our proof of concept, it was a simple Azure clickable prototype, but quite soon we decided that Actually, Angular is awesome, and it was easier and more suitable to our needs to just create an Angular front end and use a Mock API with a node. And we use it not only for user testing. The thing is that for our needs, we have some specific case that Telenor has a lot of sensitive client data, sensitive customer data, like a lot of private telephone numbers of some important people in the country. So we cannot use the real data to user testing. So we had to create an API, which was a copy, but not a real copy of the API. And this API was useful for some other things like projects. For example, when we had our summer project with students, we couldn't expose the real API to them, but we used our mock one. So we all know why it's important to prototype, because it's expensive to develop, and we should test things first. Oh, yeah, great. And we really sit in the room next to our laboratory and see what happens there, and we basically experience those things. Like when we think something is obvious, it's definitely not that obvious to our users. But some examples. So that's how our front page initially looked like. We from the early stage, and for 2 years ago, we decided not to focus on delivering the perfect front page on the first iteration, because it was not that important. We just instead listened to our users. And this was the second iteration, and the third one. Yeah, and that's what we have now. And some short examples about what we initially planned to deliver and what we ended with. This is an example of how the overview looked like. So it was a list view and then a card for an order, and we had some slider with where users could filter. When we tested that in the laboratory, we received some feedback, which was quite useful. Those filters, they were really difficult to find. People actually struggled with finding them. And the user wanted some other properties already in the collapsed view, like maybe a name or some more details about the person this order was related to. So we went with another design, which had a sticky filter bar and expandable rows, and we actually added some more details to this list view. Then one more insight that we saw as developers, and when I say we, it's both like UX and developer team, we often forget about the empty states, how our application looks like, because basically when we work on development of like front page, we are quite used to that the page has a lot of features and the user has a lot of possible accesses. But it can happen that user probably doesn't have access to some value chain, like we have mobile and fixed value chain. And then a user might not have access to some of the systems we have. If it is a new user, then it probably doesn't have an order list, and like some of the other features are hidden too. So this poor person basically has something that looks like that. And it was some real person who pointed it out, that he told something like, "Oh, you have such a fancy solution. That's quite pity that I don't see some of those pretty features." So now we went with a design which actually rearranges those sections and make it not that sad. Then we saw as well that as developers we know our solution really good, and when we navigate, we use the menu extensively, and then we know all the shortcuts to different pages in our solution. But when we look at our users and the user tests, we see that they basically always use the search. So and like the typical thing when I'm going to fix some bug on a detailed page of specific subscription or maybe of specific subscription type, what I do, I go to the list and I sort or filter by the type, then I choose some, and then any subscription suits me. But the users are not like that, so they tend to use the search bar that we have for literally everything. Like search the name, search the type, search even the type of thing they're going to do. So like when we give them a task like, could you please delete something, so they just type like delete something, because nowadays in 2016 they're really used to this type of navigation, and that's what we are giving them now. We constantly work on adding some features to our search. One more thing, we had a really complex detailed page with a lot of scrolling that was a feedback by our users, and we decided to do something about it. So our idea was to implement such a component, quick navigation sticky component, which could take you to any part of this page. And our finding here was that everyone understood that it was pretty nice and understandable and intuitive. The problem is that 0 of 15 users use it during our user test. So that was actually nice that we just prototyped that and haven't actually used any time and implemented that in production. Last thing is component reuse. We all know that component thinking and code reuse is very powerful design pattern. Don't repeat yourself, right? And why it's good, we all know. We don't unnecessarily grow the code base. We use the patterns and code chunks that are recognizable by customers. They are intuitive and responsive. But here it's a bit essential to avoid a very attractive trap. Because if we take a shortcut and just reuse something that already exists just because of this exact reason, it's already implemented, and we can actually choose something that is not the best match in this particular case. Like, it can probably work, but it's still worth checking. And we have actually experienced exactly this. We were really happy when we implemented tiles. And by tiles, it's more correct to call them cards, because it's what they are. It's like cards with some interaction components. And initially we implemented them when we were visualizing some products. Cards are really responsive, intuitive, very beautiful, and we received a lot of good feedback about they were clean, awesome, and easy to understand what they meant. And then we decided to include those tiles literally everywhere. So it is the dialog where we create a new subscription and choose the type for a subscription. We use the tiles to show invoices, and then we even added tiles for subscription types, and when we ran out of space, we decided to make them flippable, because why not? And that worked pretty well right until we met this problem. We had to visualize administrator access rights. So far, so good. We had mobile access, and we had fixed value chain access. That was nice, but then business logic got a little bit more complicated. We had to grant access to several companies and accounts inside each value chain. First, we thought, okay, we still go with this component. Maybe we can add some modal windows after flipping this tile and showing some more dialogues. But it turned out that it was way too complicated for our users because they were not able to understand that. So we implemented a new view. We just extracted this functionality totally outside our tiles and add a bit bigger section on this page. And the same thing about components. It was our modal bubble dialog. That's how we visualize the interaction with a users. So if people order something and it's important for them to know the order ID or like the final price for the operation, we use such bubbles. Or if something fails, we use the red ones, and we use them for polling and loading too. And we wrote such a nice factory for doing that, so we just reused it almost everywhere. But sometimes you probably don't need such a big, aggressive dialogue when you're just showing that, okay, your comment has been added successfully, or like you have successfully deleted what you're just going to delete. And so now we, after receiving feedback about that, we go just with small optimistic spinners and just update things live where it's possible. Yeah. So the thing is that we should always ask our users, and when we started doing this, we realized that our designs have actually become much better and much more understandable both for our users and for us as well. Yeah, I ran out of time almost. Thank you very much. You can follow me on Twitter. It's my nickname.